stream for the Cabaretti and for the brokers that are going to be in the set of Streets of New Capenna. I know some of us have gone to your local game store and have purchased your pre-release sets. I hope that you guys had a good time doing that. I actually did not end up doing that this time, but I've also got some pre-orders that I'm waiting for some of my commander decks because I like to buy singles ahead of time. So, but in any case, I went there and I also I did actually hit up the card shop today and I actually got some triomes that I also want to put in some of my commander decks because those are actually spiking up in price and I wanted to get them before they spiked up even more in price. So got plenty of those guys right here, and or if you can see them there, yeah. So those are had to get several copies so that way I can get my 3-color, 4-color decks set up because those are the decks that really need it. I'm trying to make a more budget-friendly mana base for those decks. In any case, while I was also there, I got this Mountain Dew Flamin' Hot. I don't know if y'all can see that. Yeah, it's okay. It's not great. Probably one of the not as good Mountain Dews that they've come out with, because they've had some pretty good ones that have come out recently. There's this like the Spark. That one's pretty good. But this one, not a huge fan. I'm not gonna waste the money, so I'm still gonna drink it. But it's like I think they were trying to do like a Hot Cheetos kind of thing, and it just I don't know. It didn't really work that well. But in any case, what's up, bro, Migo? I am doing great. How about you? I saw some of your cast there when you were playing the Yu-Gi-Oh game. That brings it back so many memories. Playing that game is a lot of fun. All right, so we're gonna go actually into it. So we're gonna start out with the Cabaretti. You guys actually probably can't see that on the screen there. Actually, here but I'm gonna just select them and we're going to go to each card anyway, just like we were last time. So we got Jetmer, Nexus of Revels. This is our first Cabaretti card, which these guys seem to be a lot of like goad and like very much aggressive kind of strategy. Maybe not necessarily as aggressive as the Riveteers that you saw like last time, but these guys more so want to do more combat shenanigans rather than just straight combat. Um, Yeah, game is lit. I'm a lurk for a while. Gotta wash dishes. Hey man, you gotta get those house chores done as it is, man. Um, Again, I do appreciate the follow and the viewership. I do appreciate all of my viewers that come on, and if you guys got any questions or anything, we'll talk about it, of course. All right, so let's get back to Jetmer. Jetmer Nexus of Revels, 1 red, green, and white. For a legendary creature cat demon, 5/4. Creatures you control get +1/+0 and have vigilance as long as you control 3 or more creatures. Creatures you control also get +1/+0 and have trample as long as you have 6 or more creatures. And creatures you control also get +1/+0 and have double strike as long as you control 9 or more creatures. So this is more of a go wide strategy, it looks like. You want to make a lot of cat tokens. Or well, just tokens in general, but you want to really make sure that you go. I have a lot of creatures on the battlefield. The best way to do that is token strategy. I mean, there are other ways to get non-token creatures out there, but if you really want to maximize the effectiveness of Jetmir, I think what you want to do is have cards that or creatures that enter the battlefield that make other tokens, and there's plenty of that in red, and green white is particularly good at making tokens anyway, just by themselves. Um, yeah, so like let's go to the max potential of Jetmir. So basically your creatures get +3/+0, have vigilance, trample, and double strike. That's kind of crazy. So with Jetmir, just Jetmir alone, right? So we're talking about +3, so that would make him an 8/4. But then he would also have double strike, which means that he does another combat trick. So he'll be able to, excuse me. All right, there we go. Got that out. Um, so that means that he's gonna do first strike damage first, right? Because we talked about those steps of combat, right? in the damage step, there's the first strike damage, then normal damage, and then like a cleanup step. So that first strike damage is going to happen with double strike, but then the double striking creatures will do normal damage on top of the first strike damage. So that will effectively make Jetmer able to hit for 16 damage if unblocked, which is a ton. That is a massive amount of damage. If you were to able to actually get that through, like, that would make it to where a 2-turn clock on your opponent if Jetmer was able to actually smash through with that double strike, because that's going to count as commander damage. So 16 commander damage in 1 turn. Yeah, your opponent's going to be kind of hurting, or at least one of them. The rest of them are then going to look at you and immediately try to remove Jetmer. But, I digress. All right, I'm going to go back to the page here, and we're going to open this guy in a new tab. So, Ginny Faye, Jetmer's second. That's weird. That was weird. Open. Oh, because I opened image in a new tab rather than opened the link in a new tab or a new window. Maybe that's what happened. There we go. All right. Okay, so Ginny Faye, Jetmir's second. The red-green hybrid, green and green-white hybrid. Yeah, this is obviously this particular gang is the more green-heavy. We have a elf druid, makes sense, green. Most elves come in green. We got 3/3. Okay, so if you would create one or more tokens, you may instead create that many 2/2 green cat creature tokens with haste, or that many 3/1 green dog creature tokens with vigilance. This is interesting because there's actually there's an older commander that is both a cat and a dog on a card, and it's like this tribal where whenever you play like a cat creature, you create a dog token. Whenever you play a dog creature, you create a cat token. This feels like this would play into that actually very well as a lieutenant in your deck, because then you get to choose which tokens you actually want and what keyword abilities that you want, and you're in white, so you'll have plenty of ways to share those keyword abilities amongst other creatures that you control. It's interesting. I actually do think I like this card, particularly for my jank cat deck that I'm trying to do. Right now it's 4 colors, but I am strongly considering upping it to 5 colors and just making it like a fun cat deck rather than like a one with a real strategy. But we'll see. We'll see. I don't know. I haven't quite decided that yet. All right, so Cabaret Ascendancy, right? We talked about these. These are there's an Ascendancy card in every one of these gangs. So red, green, white, enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, look at the top card of your library. If it's a creature or a planeswalker card, you may reveal it and put it into your hand. If you don't put the card into your hand, you may put it on the bottom of your library. That's pretty solid. In those colors, that says basically draw a card if it's a creature or planeswalker. So this card is definitely going to be is going to find a home in 5-color planeswalker decks. I'm pretty sure there are definitely some commanders out there. Oh, I'm trying to think of the name right now. I can visualize her because so I have a guy in my playgroup who uses this particular card as a commander. Sisay, that's what it is. It's the 5-color Sisay. Well, it's actually white, but it has 5-color in its activated ability, so therefore it counts as a 5-color commander because based on its color identity. This card would basically go in there as another value piece because you can look at the top, get the creature or planeswalker. More than likely, you're going to hit a planeswalker in a deck like Sis, or at least in his deck. He's got a ton of planeswalkers in there, and they do crazy things. Crazy. It's funny to think too, because planeswalkers typically they're not really able to protect themselves. But if you do find the ones that you can activate them and they give tokens, then it just gives you that much of a buffer to protect them, and those are typically the ones that are better. Even if the ultimate ability on them on the bottom is not that impactful as far as like winning the game is concerned, at the very least it's going to give you a lot of value in still like that's I don't really want to go too deep into it because I feel like then I'm going to be doing a deck build, but we'll move on and we'll get to that on another day. All right, so Fleetfoot Dancer, new window. All right, Fleetfoot Dancer, 1 red, green, white for an Elf Druid 4/4 trample lifelink haste. It's okay. Again, I don't think it's fantastic. It's okay. Be interesting if you did like a 3-color elf deck. This would actually like ironically like this would be a very big elf because elf druids are typically not big beefy creatures. So this is kind of interesting. I feel like this is more of an ironic play. All right. Incandescent Aria. Okay, so one of each of the colors. Incandescent Aria does 3 damage to each non-token creature. This isn't bad for like a quasi board wipe. It's not terrible. 3 damage for each non-token creature, especially in these colors, because more than likely you're going to be the one that has a bunch of tokens. So this is actually not bad. It's a soft one-sided board wipe. I like it. Jetmer's Garden. We talked about these lands. Yeah, we talked about these lands. These lands are so good. I pre-ordered every one of them. I pre-ordered 3 copies of each because they're going to be so good. They're going to be so useful in the decks that they're going to go in. New window. Devilish Valet. So this is interesting because I would think that this guy would be in the Riveteers the gang, but whatever. So Devilish Valet, 2 in a red for a 1/3 Devil Warrior, trample, haste, and alliance. So it looks like alliance is the key word that they're really trying to play on for the Cabaretti. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, double Devilish Valet's power until end of turn. Okay, so okay. Ooh, okay. I can see why this is very good. Because it doesn't care if it's a non-token creature or not, and it's whenever it enters. It doesn't trigger one time, it triggers each time. So if you have multiple tokens enter in a turn, you will double the power of Devilish Valet that many times, which can be powerful. I mean, it's still whatever that power is, and then it's a 3 toughness, so you do have to be careful swinging it into something. But this is interesting. New window. Alright, Gala Greeters. Ooh, and it has that altered art version too. Oh, that looks really awesome. That looks so cool. Alright, so the Gala Greeters, we have a 1/1 Elf Druid Alliance. There's that keyword again. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, choose one that hasn't been chosen this turn. So you can put a +1/+1 counter on it, create a tapped treasure token, or gain 2 life. I find this interesting that the green card is making treasure tokens. I just because green is already good at ramp. I feel like maybe this is a way to kind of nerf some of these cards a little bit, because now you're creating a tapped treasure token as opposed to an untapped treasure token, and 2, you're not searching for a land, which is interesting because that's typically what green would do. It would search for like a basic land, is what you would see on something like this. So interesting. I wonder if that was their way of still being within green's realm, but nerfing it slightly so you're not getting like a full advantage off of the treasure tokens. Alright, Elegant Entourage. So 3 and a green for a 4/4 Elf Druid Alliance again. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, target creature other than Elegant Entourage gets +1/+1 and gains trample until end of turn. Interesting. Kind of like it. Seems, I mean, a lot of these, honestly, a lot of these cards seem good for like an elf tribal. Because like elves are so good at creating tokens in anyways. Yeah, this is, and I guess this would be one of those things where you would beef up like one big elf, I guess, if you wanted to go that way. But whatever, it's not bad, not a bad card. All right, Cabaret Charm. We talked about how my opinion on charms. We'll see how this one is. All right, Cabaret Charm. Choose one. Cabaret Charm deals damage equal to the number of creatures you control to a target creature or planeswalker. Creatures you control get +1/+1 and gain trample until end of turn. Create 2 1/1 green and white citizen creature tokens. Again, it seems like with all these charms, the real one that you want is that top ability. And again, this is another one of those that you pay 3. Now, based on what we know already, that this gang in particular has a go wide strategy for the most part, the first ability does seem like it will pay off very quickly. However, it's still like if you're going to run this card, whatever slot that it's going to go into, this is going to go into your removal slot because of that first ability. The other two, like, they're just icing on the cake rather than what you're actually going to use it for. All right, let's see. Rocco, Cabaret Caterer. X, red, green, white. Now that's actually super cool. I'll explain that in a minute. Legendary creature, elf druid for a 3/1. When Rocco Cabaret Caterer enters the battlefield, if you cast it, you may search your library for a creature card with mana value X or less and put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle. This is super awesome for a couple of reasons. One, because it has X in particular, this means that if you pay into you can pay into X as part of your commander tax, right? Say if Rocco gets destroyed, which being that he's a 3/1 is super easy to do with something like, I don't know, Skull Clamp, and you're in colors that can tutor for equipment very easily, so you could put the Skull Clamp onto Rocco, sacrifice him, put him into the command zone, draw 2 cards off of your Skull Clamp, then return Rocco to the battlefield by casting him for, you would cast him for probably 5 if you decided not to pay into X the first time, or you would pay into 6 if you did the first time, and then because maybe not actually. Oof. Yeah. Now that I'm thinking about it, because I always get confused with these, because it says, yeah, you have to pay into X or less. Yeah, never mind. That's not what I was thinking was something where there are some X commanders out there where it's whatever, like if it says specifically, I think however much mana you spent to cast it, that's what you do, whatever the benefit of it is. Because of how this is worded, it specifically cares about the mana that goes into X, and therefore your commander tax actually does not go into Rocco, which that part kind of sucks. I mean, I guess he would be a mythic if it worked like that, huh? He's actually an uncommon. I still feel like it's okay. I feel like you could still have a pretty decent build for a card like him. I mean, you're in green, so you're gonna have you have access to all the ramps that you would ever want, but it would be kind of pushed if it was going to go the way that I was initially describing. All right, new window. Let's see what you got here. Brazen Upstart. All right, 1 for each of the colors. For an Elf Shaman 4/2 with Vigilance, when Brazen Upstart dies, look at the top 5 cards of your library. You may reveal a creature card from among them. Put that into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library near your. Okay. A value creature. It's not terrible. I don't know if I would run it in my commander deck, but it's not terrible. Alright, Sizzling Soloist. This is interesting. Alright, 3 and a red for 3/2 human citizen with Alliance. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, target creature an opponent controls can't block this turn. If this is the second time this ability has resolved this turn, that creature attacks during its controller's next combat phase if able. Okay. And so, okay, this is the part where we talked about how goad, right? How goad works is you can, if a creature is goaded, it means that it must attack if able, and it must attack a player that isn't you if able, which is actually super cool because that means you can throw your opponent stuff into your other opponents, which makes for an interesting dynamic. So, and then the first part though is that's a pretty typical red effect. Red has a lot of stuff where it forces creatures that your opponents control to where they can't block, but that's actually super cool that it has the additional thing where if it triggers again that it goads basically. I don't know why they didn't just say that that the creature is goaded, but oh, because you know what? Because that creature could still attack you. So it actually it's like half of goad. So it could still attack you, which but I mean, it's all right. They have plenty of other cards in this set for this game that actually goad. Rumor Gatherer. So 1 white for an elf wizard 2/1. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, scry 1. If this is the second time this ability has resolved this turn, draw a card instead. Okay, so that's cool. This is actually a decently valued card in white. This is actually a way that white can park on drawing cards, because white does have a tendency, even in a monocolor, to be able to go wide. So this is actually pretty decent. And again, because it cares about another creature, doesn't say anything about non-tokens, so your tokens can count too for this. This is definitely one to pick up. The only thing that I don't like is that it's a 2/1 rather than like a 2/2. Because it's a 2/1, that means it's very easily removable. I mean, it's already a creature, so it's already easy to remove, but I just don't know how you would pair that with another thing. We'll move on from that. Okay, so Witty Roastmaster, 2 and a red, 3/2 Devil Citizen. Alliance, whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, Witty Roastmaster deals 1 damage to each opponent. Okay, so this is basically impact tremors on a creature, which is kind of insane. Because this guy has so much combo potential. I mean, he's 1 more to cast than Impact Tremors as an enchantment, but this yeah, if you have a deck that's very creature based, and typically a green white red deck is very heavy creature based, and you'll have access to tutors that will be able to get this guy directly onto the battlefield. Yeah, like you can wreck face with this. He's definitely going to be a combo piece. I would look out for him. Alright, so we've got Attended Socialite. 1 and a green for a 2/1 Elf Druid. I almost said human druid. Elf Druid. Alliance, whenever another creature you control enters the battlefield under your control, Attended Socialite gets a +1/+1 until end of turn. Okay, so this is like, feels like standard / draft card that you put in your deck for that format. Seems like it would be decent for that. Not really for Commander. Alright. Rackish Revelers. Okay, so this is the one, like that cycle of cards that we talked about where you can exile it, and then it fixes a land up until you decide to cast it from exile. An Elf Druid Rogue, that's a 5/3, so it has a decent, it's a decent body. It is 5 mana to cast, though, but it does also enter with a 1/1 green and white citizen creature token. So really, you're paying 5 mana to have 6 power on the board, which actually is pretty decent. Out of all of the ones that I've seen so far, this is probably the best one because you get 6 power on the board for 5 mana. But again, I don't think this is one that I would run in my commander deck. Cabaret Courtyard, we talked about these lands too. That same thing, cycle of lands. When Cabaret Courtyard enters the battlefield, sacrifice it. When you do, you can search your library for a basic, mountain, forest, or plains card, put it onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle, gain 1 life. Again, it's okay. I just prefer the lands that I can sack later. If they tap for a colorless now, I feel like it's better. Alright, Cabaret Initiate for 1 and a 1/2 Raccoon Citizen. That's interesting. This is the first Raccoon card I've ever seen. I don't know if it's the first Raccoon card in Magic, but this is the first Raccoon card I've ever seen. Actually, we could probably look that up right now. I'm gonna open this guy up. Here we go. Yeah, you could see that I was working on a deck. This is going to be for another day. It's definitely not the explanation that I'm going to do next time. I still got some tweaking to do to it. But, alright, so let's see how many Raccoon cards in Magic there are. Okay, so Cabaret Initiate is a Raccoon. We got Squirrel Dealer, which is an unset card. That's actually super funny. Oh yeah, you guys can't see that. Hold on. Deck build display. There we go. Alright, so Raccoon Initiate, right? We talked about him already. Squirrel Dealer apparently is a Raccoon Lizard Bird, which again, this is an unset card, so it's got the silver border. That's not actually legal in regular Magic play, but the unset cards are always super goofy. And then we got Masked Bandits, we talked about Masked Bandits last time. So there's only 3 Raccoons in all of Magic, and 2 of them are out of this set. So there you go. We got our answer there. Alright, let's go back to the spoilers. Alright, so next one we got Social Climber. Social Climber. 2 and a green for a 3/2 Human Druid Alliance. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, gain 1 life. Seems okay. If you're like a life gain strategy, this seems like seems decent. I don't know if this would be like my go-to card that I'm gonna run in the deck. I feel there are other cards out there that do what this does more efficiently. So, I mean, if you want redundancy, it seems like a good idea. And then we have Celebrity Fencer. Celebrity Fencer, 3 and a white for a 3/2 Elf Druid Alliance. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on Celebrity Fencer. This feels decent. I mean, I don't know if I would put it in my commander deck, but I mean, the fact that it gets a +1/+1 counter versus just getting +1/+1 till end of turn is actually pretty decent. I wish it was maybe 3 mana instead of 4. I would take it. I would take it as like 3 mana for a 2/2 that does that, but whatever, it's fine. It's okay. All right, we're gonna skip past these mono cards because we're not gonna be talking about that this time. We are going for the commander stuffs now. Oh, I think Yep, I went right past it. Hold on. Went too fast. Okay. Alright, so Kit Kanto. So Kit Kanto is actually the commander that comes in the commander precon for it's called Cabaret. What's it called? Cabaret Cacophony. That's right, that's what it's called. Okay. Interesting. So okay, Kit Kanto, Mayhem Diva. 1 and each of the colors for Cabaret. A legendary cat bard druid. That's the first that's the first ever time I've seen that combination. I think it's awesome. It's a 3/3. When Kit Kanto enters the battlefield, create a 1/1 green and white citizen creature token. At the beginning of combat on each player's turn, you may tap 2 untapped creatures you control. When you do, target creature that player controls gets +2/+2 and gains trample until end of turn. Goad that creature. That can be pretty fun. That can be pretty insane depending on what you like, depending on who you do that to. That can be a lot of fun. Um, that would definitely cause for some interesting interactions. And being that Kid Kenta would be your commander, so you get the idea of the go wide strategy, and you're trying to goad your opponent's stuff. That's gonna be mayhem indeed. Okay, so this one I don't even know how to pronounce that. Fabine. Boss is confident. I'm gonna go with Fabine. Fabine. I don't know. All right, 3 red, green, white. Wow, that's heavy. Okay. Um, Cat Advisor, 3/6 creature tokens. Excuse me. You control have haste. Parlay. Oh, I have not seen that keyword in a long time. Okay. At the beginning of combat on your turn, each player reveals the top card of their library. For each land card revealed this way, you create a 1/1 green and white citizen creature token. Then creatures you control get +1/+1 till end of turn for each non-land card revealed this way. Then each player draws a card. Huh. So this is like there's a Selvala that's a green white that does something kind of like this, except that you just get to reveal, and then you get a certain amount of mana, like green mana, and then each player draws the card. This is like kind of like the flip side of that, because you're not able to. Well, I wouldn't say flip side. I'd say maybe like half of that, but then you also get tokens because you get to, instead of getting mana and card draw, you get a token in card draw. But still, that's decent. The thing about Selvala, though, the reason why she can be pretty broken is because she taps to parlay, and so if you have way, and especially since there's many ways to untap in white and green, you can do like infinite tap untaps with her and parlay everybody until that you effectively mill out their library like that. Whereas this one, it's specifically the trigger on the beginning of combat, which would make sense because typically cards in red are more like focused on combat rather than anything else. So interesting. All right, Cabaret Confluence. So yeah, the Confluence cards, they're always pretty good with this set. So we've got 3 and 1 of each of the colors for a sorcery. Choose 3. You may choose the same mode more than once. Create a token that's a copy of a target creature you control. It gains haste. Sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. Exile target artifact or enchantment. Creatures target player controls get +1/+1 and gain first strike until end of turn. Interesting that it says creatures target player controls rather than creatures you control. This can be a very political card. So, and then it gives them first strike, so you can now. The thing about that is that it's a sorcery, so more than likely you're going to play it on your turn. I just find that very odd. Man, I wish that was an instant because that would be baller as an instant. If it was an instant, like this would have been a great card. As a sorcery, not so great because like that could have been very political. Now not so much. I don't really understand why you would have target creature gain first strike or get target player have first strike. Why I don't know why you would give first strike to another player during your turn, because it's not like goading the creatures. The combat happens during your combat. It would happen during their combat. I don't know. I don't know. But I feel like the main thing that you want to do is create copies of creatures, and then you can create up to 3 copies of a particular creature, and then that will trigger your alliance a lot. which is, I feel like that's the main reason why you would play this card, is getting those alliance triggers. Alright, then we got Jolene, the Plunder Queen. Alright, so 2... Did we talk about Jolene already? I think Jolene was actually in the other deck. I don't think this is actually in this one. Okay. Yeah, so this is the part where we're... I feel like the Soul Nourisher is actually in this one. Yeah, Best Soul Nourisher, and according to the deck list, is actually in this one. So let's go to her. Alright, so 1, a green and a white, legendary creature, human citizen, 1/1. Whenever one or more other creatures with base power and toughness 1/1 enter the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on Best Soul Nourisher. Whenever Best attacks, each other creature you control with base power and toughness 1/1 gets +X/+X until end of turn, where X is the number of +1/+1 counters on Best. Okay, she seems like a pretty standard token strategy, because most of your tokens are going to be 1/1s. And citizens are great for doing that. So you can do like human citizen, like weenies. That'd be an interesting deck to play. Alright, let's see what's next on our list here. Okay, Grand Crescendo. Well, actually, Boss's Chauffeur is, but we're going to have to look at the white cards to start. Alright, so Boss's Chauffeur. Here we go. Alright, 4 and a white for a 0/0 elf citizen. Interesting. Boss's Chauffeur enters the battlefield with the number of +1/+1 counters on it equal to 1 plus the number of other creatures you control. Okay, again, go wide. Alliance, whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on Boss's Chauffeur. When Boss's Chauffeur dies, create a 1/1 green and white citizen creature token for each +1/+1 counter on it. This makes sense. So it kind of it feeds into itself, and it feeds into the deck strategy of, okay, you put more counters on me, then when I die, I now create a whole bunch of tokens, so that way I can trigger a whole bunch of other alliance triggers on other creatures. So yeah, I understand exactly what that's there for. That's actually a cool card. I like it. Alright, Grand Crescendo. Let's go to that one next. Grand Crescendo. Okay. X white white for an instant. Create X 1/1 green and white citizen creature tokens. Creatures you control gain indestructible until end of turn. Okay, this is kind of cool. Now, the thing about this is a card like this is that typically you want to pay like 2 or 3 mana at the most to protect your creatures by giving them indestructible, right? So I guess you would be willing to pay white just to get your creatures indestructible until end of turn, or you can pay, if you have more mana just sitting around, you can pay all the mana into it, and then you get more alliance tokens or alliance triggers off of the tokens. So that's actually kind of a cool card. I like it, and especially with this particular color combination, having green and red in there, there's potential for a lot of mana, a lot of explosive mana that you could put into Grand Crescendo. So I think this is actually a fun card, a good card. Alright, Master of Ceremonies. Let's see. Oh. Went to Resourceful Defense by accident. Here we go. Master of Ceremonies is a Rhino card. Okay. Haven't seen rhinos in a minute. Alright, 3 and a white for a 3/4 Rhino Druid. At the beginning of your upkeep, each opponent chooses money, friends, or secrets. Ooh, okay. For each player who chooses money, you and that player each create a treasure token. For each player who chooses friends, you and that player create a 1/1 green and white citizen creature token. For each player who chooses secrets, you and that player draw a card. That's actually super cool. I like the in this set in particular, it seems like, or well, and the commander decks, I should say, more so in particular, have a lot of these cards where you get to interact with your opponents a lot more, and this is one of those cards. I really enjoy cards like this. I don't. I will say this much. I actually want to make a deck where I run these cards more because I typically don't have decks that run cards with this type of interaction that much, and I think it would be a lot of fun to do. I just haven't decided what the commander for that deck is going to be quite yet. Alright, so we got Indulgent Excess, which is a red card. And that's this double card. So this is interesting. The first time these cards came out was in the set called a Monket. And so these dual face cards are their first face, which you can cast from your hand as is. And then this aftermath part, you can cast it from your graveyard, but then you exile it after, which typically the card has had its usefulness after you use it this way. So we've got Indulge with a 2 and a red for whenever a creature you control attacks this turn, create a 1/1 green and white citizen creature token that is tapped and attacking. Okay, super cool. And then we've got the Aftermath of Excess. So one in a red, excuse me, and then you exile it from your graveyard, and when you do, create a treasure token for each creature you controlled that dealt combat damage to a player this turn. That's actually, oh man, and especially in a color like red, that is going to deal one is going to deal a significant amount of combat damage, and two, is going to get you a bunch of treasure tokens. Now, those treasure tokens don't come in tapped, which is perfect. That's exactly what you exactly what you need going into your post-combat main phase, so then you can set up for the next turn. Okay, Life of the Party. Feel like that's another red card. Oh, it's right next to it. Perfect. Alright. 3 in a red for an elemental 0/1 first strike trample haste. Okay, keyword soup. Whenever Life of the Party attacks, it gets +X+O until end of turn, where X is the number of creatures you control. Okay. When Life of the Party enters the battlefield, if it's not a token, each opponent creates a token that's a copy of it. The tokens are goaded for the rest of the game. Ooh, okay. Okay, so you get the original copy, yours is not goaded, and it's more than likely going to be bigger than the rest of your opponents. Then your opponents have the copies of it, but it does that goad thing that this particular commander deck likes to do. So that's interesting. That's interesting, because then it forces them to have to attack your other opponents, and more than likely end up destroying each other's stuff. All right, Rose Room Treasure. Rose Room Treasure here. Oh, Treasurer. Okay. It's Ogre Warrior. Okay. So 3 in a red for a 4/3 Ogre Warrior Alliance. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, create a treasure token if this is the first or second time this ability has resolved this turn. Otherwise, you may pay X. When you do, Rose Room Treasure deals X damage to any target. Ooh, that's actually super cool. Now, I see. Okay, because then based on the treasure tokens that you create, you can then expend those treasure tokens immediately to do 2 damage to something, right? That's actually interesting. That's interesting. Yeah, it doesn't. I see Pitiless Plunderers in the Thesaurus, which that's specifically when another creature you control dies. But yeah, this is for enters the battlefield, and even so, if you have 2 creatures enter and you have 2 treasure tokens off of that, that's pretty decent. I would just take that just for that. But then you have a payoff for it too, which is super cool. Seize the Spotlight. Okay, so this is another one. Seize the Spotlight is 2 in a red for a sorcery. Each opponent chooses Fame or Fortune. This is another one of those interactive cards, which is fun. For each player who chose Fame, gain control of a creature that player controls until end of turn. Untap those creatures and they gain haste until the end of turn. For each creature who chose Fortune, you draw a card and create a treasure token. Okay. So it's like the pick your poison. Like, you either get my thing or you get to draw cards. And it's like, depending on the deck, either one could be dangerous. Oh, yep, I did that before it went over there, so I have to go all the way to the bottom again. Alright. Cool. Alright, so we've got Crash the Party is the next one. It doesn't look like it's here, so it might be a green. Yep, Crash the Party is green. 5 and a green. Create a tapped 4/4 green Rhino Warrior creature token for each tapped creature you control. Okay, interesting. Probably because you're in red, they're concerned about you having haste. And so that's why you had to get it tapped. But I mean, there are ways to untap it anyway. But yeah, interesting. So I mean, still it doubles your board and it puts a ton of power on board. So the next turn you're probably going to smash through. Alright, let's see. Killer Service, alright. Killer Service, 2 and a green for an enchantment. When Killer Service enters the battlefield, create a number of food tokens equal to the number of opponents you have. So food tokens is not something that we've talked about yet. They're artifacts with 2 and tap. Sacrifice this artifact, you gain 3 life. There's a lot of food synergies out there, and I would think it would be kind of fun to build like a food deck. And they do, in the Strixhaven set, they did actually have like a commander in there that is a green and black like food commander, which would be kind of fun, but it is kind of, from my understanding, it's pretty hard to pilot. I've never actually tried to build it myself. Maybe I will one of these days, and we'll see. So let's get through the rest of the card, though. At the beginning of your end step, you may pay 2 and sacrifice a token. If you do, create a 4/4 green Rhino Warrior creature token. Oh my goodness. Alright. Well, so that's actually interesting because it doesn't specify food. It can be any token that you can pay 2, and then you can get a green Rhino Warrior. But the food tokens that it creates on its own, interesting. And if you're playing like in a typical 4-player pod, you'll get 3 of those food tokens. It's interesting. It's an interesting card. I don't think the rest of the deck really has any other food token synergies, though. So it'll be one of those things that you get the precon as one of those one-off cards that you take out and put that in your food token deck that you want to focus that strategy on. Scepter of Celebration. Feel like... Here we go. Alright, 2 and a green for an artifact equipment. Equipped creature gets +2/+0 and has trample. Whenever equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, you create that many 1/1 green and white citizen creature tokens. Equip costs is 3. Okay, so this is a card that helps you go wide. It can be good if you're an aggressive go wide strategy, which is exactly what these colors seem to do. Vivian's Stampede. I am very curious about this. So 4 green. Each creature you control gains vigilance, trample, and melee. Now that's something I haven't seen in a while, until end of turn. Whenever a creature with melee attacks, it gains +1/+1 until end of turn for each opponent you attacked this combat. At the beginning of your next main phase this turn, draw a card for each player who was dealt combat damage this turn. Oh, okay, so that's actually, oof. Yeah, green cards want this. Now, the only slight downside to it is that it has melee, which means that it kind of forces you to spread the love a little bit, when typically if you're going to go to combat, you want to focus in on one opponent to try to get rid of that opponent as quickly as possible if you're gonna swing out. But the benefit is that with melee giving you the +1/+1 for each opponent that you attack, you can spread the love a little bit, and this gives them trample, which means more than likely it is going to get that combat damage that you need, because it doesn't care how much combat damage you did, it just cares about each player who was dealt combat damage, which means that your creatures will get +3/+3 if you're in a 4-player pod and you're having one creature attack each opponent at a minimum, and then you will end up drawing 3 cards, which is pretty decent. And they have Vigilance, so they don't have to tap, which means if they're a creature that has a tap ability, you can still use it on your next, your post-combat main phase. So that's a pretty decent card. I think I'm gonna see this card a lot in green decks. All right. We already went over best. Cabaret Confluence, we talked about that. Prosperous Partnership. Okay, let's see what that one is. Prosperous Partnership. 1, a red and a white for an enchantment. When Prosperous Partnership enters the battlefield, create 2 1/1 green and white citizen creature tokens. Tap 3 untapped creatures you control. Create a treasure token. Okay. I feel like this is an okay card. I don't think this is a fantastic card. I think that if you have a deck that is already in a go wide strategy, this card is good. And if you're in the red white colors, you do still have that possibility of having go wide decks that will benefit from this, especially in these particular colors, because red has its own way of ramping, but it's not consistent, and white doesn't really ramp by itself very well at all. It more so plays like this catch-up game. So having those two be able to create treasure tokens in this particular way is interesting. And the fact that it's going to be in a deck that also has green, this will make this card that much better. False Floor. Okay, interesting. False Floor is 4. Enters the battlefield tapped. Ugh. Creatures enter the battlefield tapped. Okay, that's not that bad. And then you can 2 and tap, exile False Floor, exile all untapped creatures, activate only as a sorcery. That is a very interesting board wipe. That is a very interesting board wipe. That you can make that very one-sided in a very interesting way. Initially I was like, this enters the battlefield tapped. I don't really like that. But yeah, this actually it feels like Nevinril's Disc. Yeah, and actually Nevinril's Disc is right there. Except that this only hits creatures, which is actually kind of nice because sometimes I want board wipes that don't hit my artifacts and enchantments that are helping me. So this is interesting. I don't know. I might actually run this card in a artifact heavy deck. We'll see. We'll see. Rumor Gatherer. Okay. Let's see here. Rumor Gatherer. Talked about Sizzling Soloist already. Rumor Gatherer. Cabaret Charm and Cabaret Courtyard. We already did Rumor Gatherer. Rumor Gatherer might be another one of those single color cards. Let's see if it's actually in here first, though. Nope. Nope, I don't see it there. Rumor Gatherer feels like it would be like a black card, or even a blue card, but very interesting. Huh. This is going to be another one of those I'm going to have to look up. Alright, let's switch the screen to the deck build display. Alright. Rumor Gatherer. Oh, no, we did go over Rumor Gatherer. Yep, that's a white card. Okay. Still odd that it's a white card, but whatever. It's fine. All right. Let's go back in. So yeah, we went over all the Cabaret cards. Let's go over the final part. The final gang, the brokers, which is ironic. They're definitely the more, like, they're like the banksters is what they are. I wish they called them that too, banksters. This sounds better than brokers. But I guess, like, because banksters just sounds like a criminal organization, you know? But in any case, we've got Falco Spara, Pact Weaver. So 1 and green, white, blue, which is the particular colors of these. The old word for that was Bant, but I guess this time it's broker. So we've got a legendary bird demon, 3/3, flying trample, Falco Spara, Pact Weaver, enters the battlefield with a shield counter on it. Now I've noticed a lot of these colors have a lot to deal with shield counters because it's not so much that the shield counter itself does anything, but it's the fact that it is a counter of some sort that goes on something, because these cards seem to care about having different types of counters on them or removing counters off of them. So let's see what they have going into this whole part of the gang, this part of the set. So let's see. You may look at the top card of your library at any time. You may cast spells from the top of your library by removing a counter from a creature you control, in addition to paying their other cost. That's powerful. That's being able to rip through your deck, especially if you're able to find infinite counters. That's it's so easy to be able to play stuff off the top of your or to cast, right? So I'm glad that it actually does say cast spells, because that means that you can't necessarily play lands. Like, unless you're like a land deck that like purposefully will like rip through, like you can't, like there is that that point that you're gonna have to stop because you have a land as opposed to a spell to cast. But still, this I can see Falco being a very combo centric deck where you can rip through the deck very easily. New window. See, there's another cat. See? All right, so let's see. Okay, green, white, and white blue hybrid. So this is a more white heavy legendary creature, Grat. I don't know what I'm talking about. Cat Citizen, 2/2, Rigo's Streetwise Mentor, enters the battlefield with a shield counter on it. If it would be dealt damage or destroyed, remove a shield counter from it instead. Okay, so it does actually do something, and it's a decent thing. Never mind just like, oh my goodness. This is fantastic. Like, it's like, what is that? There's another keyword that's very similar to that. Totem armor. That's what it's called. Totem armor, typically that's on like an aura, does something very similar to that. Oh man. That's cool. Okay. Still doesn't get around exile though. So it's like half of indestructible. Like, it's not indestructible all the way, but it is like partially. So that's interesting. I like it. Whenever you attack a player or planeswalker with one or more creatures with power 1 or less, draw a card. Okay, so that's interesting. So this is another one of those that feels like if you're going to make this one your commander, you want to go like weenies. You want to go wide with small creatures. That'll be interesting. Alright, Broker's Ascendancy. So this is the one that's been spoiled like in the beginning. Like when the Tri-Lands that came out in this set was spoiled, like this card was spoiled right after that. And it's pretty decent. One for each of the colors for brokers, and at the beginning of your end step, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control and a loyalty counter on each planeswalker you control. This one, just like Cabaret Ascendancy, feels like it should slide right into your 5-color planeswalker deck. There's no reason why you shouldn't put it in there. Alright, the next one is called Titan of Industry. And this one is a big one. Okay, so we've got 4 green, green, green for a 7/7 elemental. Reach and Trample. When Titan of Industry enters the battlefield, choose 2. Destroy target artifact or enchantment. Target player gains 5 life. Create a 4/4 green Rhino Warrior creature token. Put a shield counter on a creature you control. Probably putting the shield counter on the Titan of Industry. Just saying. He's a big boy. That'll be interesting to see. Alright, next one. Sanctuary Warden. So 4 white white for a Angel Soldier 5/5. That's cool. Flying Sanctuary Warden enters the battlefield with 2 shield counters on it. Okay. Whenever Sanctuary Warden enters the battlefield or attacks, you may remove a counter from a creature or planeswalker you control. If you do, draw a card and create a 1/1 green and white citizen creature token. Oh my goodness. It's a beater angel that's a card draw engine. Like, oh my gosh. Like I have a Bant deck already, which I'm gonna probably do a deck explanation on that, what that deck does. And I feel like Sanctuary Warden goes in that deck. I also feel like Falco goes in that deck, but I really feel like Sanctuary Warden goes in that deck. Because I remove a counter, draw a card, and create a token that I can just expend later for whatever I want. Oh man. Oh man. The nice thing about this is that it's mono white, which means I can put this in a mono white deck as well. Now, that being said, that mono white deck would have to be doing what this card wants you to do, which is putting counters on stuff. And while there are white cards that do that, typically, at least from what I've seen, is the decks that are very good at doing that don't just have white. It's like a white green, a white blue, or all of these colors, or even white red decks have ones that put counters on it a little bit more effectively than just white by itself. But still, it's possible. Spara's Headquarters, yeah, the Tri-Land, we talked about that. And the other ones, just if you got a deck that can run these, that runs these colors, and you can slide this card in there, definitely do it. The fact that it's tutorable just makes that all the way around a better land. Yes, it enters tapped, but if you're going for a budget mana base, this is still a great card to have in that deck. Okay, Undercover Operative. Let's see what this guy does. This is interesting. So 2 blue for a Shapeshifter Rogue 0/0. You may have Undercover Operative enter the battlefield as a copy of any creature on the battlefield, except it enters with a shield counter on it if you control that creature. Okay, so that's actually cool. It gives you a benefit. Like, you can still copy anything there, but it gives you a benefit for copying something that you already control. It seems decent. I would run it in like a clone deck. Soul of Emancipation. This is interesting looking. Soul of Emancipation. 4 and all of the colors for an avatar. 5/7. When Soul of Emancipation enters the battlefield, destroy up to 3 other target non-land permanents. For each of those permanents, its controller creates a 3/3 white angel creature token with flying. Okay. So this feels like half of a board wipe, but then it also gives your opponents creatures, which, I mean, I guess if you want your opponents to have just a 3/3 flying angel as opposed to whatever their massive, like, big bad creature is, doesn't seem like a bad idea. The only thing is that this doesn't necessarily exile, so you do have to be careful about that. Oh, you know what? I know that's what you do that for. So you can remove something of your opponent's, but what you do right, is you probably remove something of your opponent's and then you target your own stuff, but it's stuff with shield counters on it. So you remove the shield counters that's protecting your stuff already, and then you get 2 out of the 3 white angel creature tokens. See, that's big brain on Brad. Alright, Endless Detour. 1 for each of the colors for an instant. The owner of target non-land permanent or card in the graveyard puts it on the top or bottom of their library. Okay, this is interesting. I feel like this is more... This doesn't feel like a card that you use for removal so much as like maybe protection. Because, like, as a removal card, I'm like, well, the opponent can just choose to put it right back on top of their library. Like, that doesn't, you know? Like, I mean, the owner of target spell part is interesting because you could counter a spell and put that back on top of the library and delay it for a turn. Because if you target a spell with that, and you force it back on top of the library, then it gets removed from the stack immediately, and whatever that card was going to do doesn't do that anymore. So that's actually kind of interesting. You can delay it. But as far as like an actual, like, I'm going to put a non-land permanent from the battlefield somewhere, like, it just goes back on top of the library. They're just going to recast it. But if I'm looking at like my board, right, and maybe I want to protect something, or I want to put something from, maybe somebody wants to exile my graveyard for some reason, I want to protect a piece that's in my graveyard, put it back into my library, I feel like it would be decent for that. It's interesting. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a versatile card, but it's just feels very interesting. I don't know if I would run it though. Like, I don't know if I would run that on a consistent basis. I think is what I'm trying to get at. All right, so brokers, 1 for each of the colors of brokers. Choose 1. Target creature you control gets +1/+1 until end of turn. It deals damage equal to its power to target creature or planeswalker an opponent controls. Destroy target enchantment or draw 2 cards. Yeah, I feel like, again, with all these charms, it feels like the first one is what you run it for. You can draw 2 cards, sure, but there are cards out there that do things more effectively, more efficiently to draw 2 cards. Legrella, the magpie. So I actually had to look up the other day what a magpie was, and it's like I think it's like a chatty person, basically. So, alright, so Legrella the magpie is 1 for each of the colors. When Legrella the magpie enters the battlefield, exile any number of target creatures controlled by different players until Legrella leaves the battlefield. When an exiled card enters the battlefield under your control this way, put 2 +1/+1 counters on it. So this is interesting. This can either be like a prison deck, which is actually kind of interesting, or you can like do like some crazy blink shenanigans where like you have Legrella on the battlefield, you remove your stuff, then at like the end of your turn with like Thassa or the Conjurer's Closet, or there's other cards that are definitely fit these colors that'll do that. So you can exile Legrella, and then Legrella re-enters the battlefield, then your creatures come back even bigger, and then you can prison other stuff, like maybe your opponent's stuff, just so that way you can get them off the battlefield. This would be a very interesting commander to build around. Again, this is another one of those that's a uncommon, and all of them are pretty sleeper in my opinion. They can all do some pretty interesting things. Obviously, this is like the Cabaretti one felt like it was lackluster, but still, like, all of these are pretty decent. Alright, let's go to Disciplined Duelist. 1 for each of the broker colors for a human citizen, 2/1 with double strike. Disciplined Duelist enters the battlefield with a shield counter on it. Okay. I mean, if you're just running just creatures that have counters on it just because, seems okay. I don't know if I'd put it in my commander deck, though. Alright, Swooping Protector. Swooping Protector is a 3 and a white for a 2/1 flash, so instant speed. Flying, oh, it's a bird citizen, almost forgot about that. Flying, okay, good, it's a bird. Swooping Protector enters the battlefield with shield counter on it. Okay, cool. Yeah, it's another one of those that, like, it seems kind of cool, but I don't know if that's effective for a commander deck. It might be good for draft or modern or standard, but okay. Voice of the Vermin. That seems interesting. So 3 and a green for a human citizen 2/2. Enters the battlefield with a shield counter on it, and whenever he attacks, target creature you control has a base power and toughness of 4/4 until end of turn. This reminds me a lot of the Quandrix cards from the Strixhaven, where like they like shifted the base power and toughness based on certain things. Sometimes it was a 4/4, other times it was like based on different things. This is interesting, kind of like reminds me of that a little bit. Dapper Shieldmate, okay. Alright, Dapper Shieldmate, 2/2 human soldier. Dapper Shieldmate enters with a shield counter, no surprise there. As long as it's your turn, he has +2 and +0, okay. Again, he's okay. He's not one I don't think you would run in your commander deck. Wing Shield Agent, 2 and a blue for a 2/3 human soldier. Wing Shield Agent enters the battlefield with a shield counter on it. Whenever he attacks, up to one other target creature gains flying until end of turn. So that's interesting. You might run that. Alright, Spara's Adjudicators. So this is a cat citizen for 5 mana. Okay, so this is that cycle that does the land fixing. Whenever it enters the battlefield, target creature an opponent controls can't attack or block until your next turn. Okay, so it does give a pretty decent benefit, but again, that just seems... Yeah, and it's for... You get a 4/4 for 5. It does that. It's okay. Again, it's like... It's just a... It feels like a lot of mana. That's what it is. It just feels like a lot of mana. Alright. Broker's Hideout. We talked about these lands. Again, they're okay. Not... I wouldn't recommend putting it in your deck, but... You know, to each their own. Broker's Initiate, 1 white mana for a 0/4 cat citizen. 4 hybrid green-blue for Broker's Initiate has base power and toughness 5/5 until end of turn, so that's actually kind of interesting. Interesting. You pay mana to... that's another one, though, that feels like it's good as a standard card rather than a commander card. Boon of Safety, 1 white. Instant, put a shield counter on a target creature and scry 1. This is actually a decent card, I feel like, for Feather, because you could target Feather, put a shield counter on Feather, and then scry 1, and then the Boon of Safety would then get exiled, and then it can come back to your hand, so you have a constant way to look at the top card of your library. And actually, in a way, a shield counter is actually somewhat better than something like God's Willing, which is right here, which is the one where it gains protection until from the color of your choice till end of turn. Because then, like, even without you having the card available to you, it has a counter on it already. So that would be interesting. Actually, I might do a swap out for a Boon of Safety in that deck. Alright, Rock's Pummeler. Rock's Pummeler is a 5 and a green for a Rhino Soldier. That's a 6/3. It enters the battlefield with a shield counter, and it has trample as long as it has a shield counter on it. Makes sense. Just a big beefy boy. Broker's Veteran. Broker's Veteran, 1 and a blue for a human soldier, 2/1. Enters the battlefield with a shield... no, excuse me. When it dies, put a shield counter on a target creature you control. Okay, interesting. That is an interesting one. I don't... I feel like in a commander deck, you probably could put this on something, but you would want that commander deck to focus on things dying, and this would be like a kind of a quasi protection card, maybe for your commander. You put a shield counter on your commander, even if it's like in blue black or something, because this is a mono blue card, so you could put it in a blue black deck or something, and then that would give it like a little extra boon to your commander there. It'd be interesting. All right, let's go down here. All right, and this is the actual face commander of the precon for brokers. So Perry, I think that's how you say that. Perry, the pulverizer. So one and then one of each of the colors for a legendary creature Rhino Soldier. Enters the battlefield with a shield counter on target creature, which probably the first time it enters, you probably choose itself, but whenever Perry attacks, target creature you control gains trample and gets +X/+X until end of turn, where X is the number of different kinds of counters among permanents you control. Now that's actually kind of cool. That's an interesting thing, again, where it wants you to put different counters on things, and I feel like the best way to upgrade this deck, if you're going to make this one your face commander, the best way to upgrade this deck is to look at cards from Ikoria, where they had those cycling cards that can put a lifelink counter on something, or you can or they have other cards that put those keyword counters on stuff. And I mean, these particular colors are very easily able to put +1/+1 counters on just about anything, but the fact that this one cares about different kinds of counters on stuff makes it a little bit more interesting. Alright, Kroos Defense Contractor. One and one of each of the broker colors for Kroos Defense Contractor, which is a 2/4 Cat Advisor. At the beginning of your upkeep, put a shield counter on a target creature an opponent controls. Whenever you put one or more counters on a creature you don't control, tap that creature and goad it. It gains trample until your next turn. Interesting. So this actually, it taps down the creature, so you have the ability to kind of swing in and get like a little chip damage in there. But then that creature's goaded, so it forces that creature to have to attack somebody else. That's interesting. And it gets a shield counter, so if that creature would be destroyed or dealt damage and would be destroyed by the damage, then the shield counter goes away. So then you can just put the shield counter right back on that creature and keep goading it over and over and over again. Oh, that's gonna be so rude. It's gonna be fun, but it's gonna also be rude. Alright, Broker's Confluence. 2 and 1 of each of the colors for brokers. Instant. Choose 3. You may choose the same mode more than once. Proliferate. So if you have a counter on something, on a permanent or player, and this affects the whole battlefield, right? So you can do it on even your opponent's stuff if you really want to. So any number of permanents and or players, then you put another type of that counter onto something. Target creature phases out, which is interesting. We've talked about phasing out a little bit. And then counter target activated or triggered ability. Interesting. Okay. Target creature phasing out is actually super good. And proliferate, like, I mean, you can proliferate 3 times for 5 mana. That can do some damage. Yeah. Seems decent. Interesting though that it cares about proliferation, where it seems like the other parts of that deck want, and the brokers in general care about different types of counters being on stuff, rather than the same counters being on stuff. So I find that interesting. But then again, you can have 3 shield counters on something, and you just, when it gets dealt damage, you just remove that shield counter. So it just gives more of a buffer before that creature would die. Alright, so let's go down here to see what the other cards are. We talked about Kroos. Angelic Sleuth. It's probably a white card. Yep, here we go. 2 and a white for a 2/3 Angel Advisor. Flying, whenever another permanent you control leaves the battlefield, if it had counters on it, investigate. So you create a colorless clue token with 2 sacrifice the artifact, draw a card. That's interesting. I think it's kind of plays into the clue token stuff, and you can definitely, white can use the help with clue tokens, given you do have to make sure that you have enough mana to kind of overcome some of that, because paying 2 to sacrifice an artifact and draw a card does become costly. Contractual Safeguard. Okay, let's see what this guy is. 2 and a white for an instant with addendum. Okay. So if you cast the spell during your main phase, put a shield counter on a creature you control. Okay, cool. Then choose a kind of counter on a creature you control. Put a counter of that kind on each other creature you control. Oh my goodness. And that's okay, so that's really the part where the addendum really gives you a payoff, because you can put a shield counter and then you can, yeah, then you can put a shield counter on everything, which is kind of cool actually. All right. Damning Verdict. Damning Verdict feels like a wrath. 3 white for, yep, destroy all creatures with no counters on them, which makes sense because it's very one-sided for a deck that cares about creatures that have counters on them. Alright. Resourceful Defense. Here we go. 2 and a white for an enchantment. Whenever a permanent you control leaves the battlefield, if it had counters on it, put those counters on a target permanent you control. And then 4 and a white, move any number of counters from a target permanent you control to another target permanent you control. Oh my goodness. That's going to be a good card. That'll be a good card in a lot of decks, actually. Because then that has, it's like, yeah, I was about to mention that, the Ozolith. So the Ozolith is it's another way to save counters in case something, like, yeah, like, because when something leaves the battlefield, right, so you can move those counters onto something, you don't lose all of it, and then, over time, you can just put those counters back where you want them to go. Gives you a good stockpile. Alright, Skyboon Evangelist. Oh boy. Alright, here we go. Oh my goodness, support 6? Oh my goodness. Alright, so 4 and a white for a 3/3 Bird Advisor flying. When Skyboon Evangelist enters the battlefield, support 6. Put a +1/+1 counter on each of up to 6 other target creatures. Whenever a creature with a counter on it attacks one of your opponents, that creature gains flying until end of turn. Oh my goodness. Yeah, that's decent. That's pretty decent. All right, Avon Courier. Avon Courier. Feel like that's still a white card? Maybe it's a blue card. It could be a blue card. Yeah, here we go. Avon Courier. 1 and a blue for a Bird Advisor, 1/1 flying. Whenever Avon Courier attacks, choose a counter on a permanent you control. Put a counter of that kind on a target permanent you control if it doesn't have a counter of that kind on it. Okay, cool. So again, given another opportunity to spread the love a little bit. I like it. Alright. Shield Broker. Shield Broker. Here we go. Shield Broker, 3 blue for a Cellophid Advisor. 3/4. When a Shield Broker enters the battlefield, put a shield counter on a target non-commander creature you don't control. You gain control of that creature for as long as it has a shield counter on it. Interesting. Very interesting. That's a cool way to kind of take control of stuff, and then you can give it back to your opponent later. Okay. Storm of Forms. Okay, Storm of Forms. 3 and a blue for an instant. When you cast a spell, copy it for each kind of counter among permanents you control. You may choose new target for the copies. Return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. Okay, so this is basically a board wipe. This is a quote-unquote more fair version of Cyclonic Rift. Because it relies on the fact that you have to have different types of counters on stuff that you have. Interesting. Yeah. Bribe Taker. Bribe Taker, Bribe Taker. Definitely sounds like a blue card name, but I'm not seeing it. Bribe Taker. Maybe it's a green card. Yep, Bribe Taker. Green card right here. Alright, 5 and a green for a Rhino Warrior, 6/6 trample. When Bribe Taker enters the battlefield, for each kind of counter on permanents you control, you may put your choice of a +1/+1 counter or a counter of that kind on Bribe Taker. Okay, cool. So he gets to kind of share in that a little bit. So you get, and it feels like you want to put like a shield counter, right? But then you can put other stuff on there too. All right, Family's Favor. Family's Favor. This enchantment right here. All right, 2 and a green for an enchantment. Whenever you attack, put a shield counter on a target attacking creature. Oh, that's brilliant. Oh, yeah, freaking green aggro deck loves that already. Until end of turn, it gains whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, remove a shield counter from it. If you do, draw a card. This is another green card draw. Jeez. Green card draw is getting better and better. Like, and the different ways that you're able to do it, like, oof, man. Alright. Park Heights Maverick? I think that's actually how you said it. Park Heights Maverick. Here we go. Yep. Park Heights Maverick. 2 and a green for a 2/2 human soldier, Dethrone. Oh, wow, I haven't seen that in a while. So whenever this creature attacks the player with the most life or tied for the most life, put a +1/+1 counter on it. Then Park Heights Maverick can't be blocked by creature's power 2 or less. Whenever Park Heights Maverick deals combat damage to a player or dies, proliferate. Pretty decent. That feels like it goes in a lot of decks. I mean, and combat damage to a player, proliferate. Yeah. And with Dethrone. Yeah. That's decent. That's an okay card to me. I feel like Atraxa wants that card. I definitely feel like Atraxa wants that card. Okay. Agent's Toolkit. Agent's Toolkit feels like an artifact, though. Yes, here it is. Okay. It's a clue. Interesting. Okay. So 1 green blue for an artifact clue. Agent's Toolkit enters the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter, a flying counter, a death touch counter, and a shield counter on it. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, you may move a counter from Agent's Toolkit onto that creature. Then, oh, that's so cool. Because that would even pair with that other enchantment where you can move stuff to Agent's Toolkit after after you remove something from the battlefield. You can take all those counters, put it back on Agent's Toolkit with that enchantment, and then now whenever something else re-enters, you can just move a counter right back onto whatever, or to somewhere else. You can share the love again. Ooh. Yeah, that's decent. Alright, and then you can sacrifice the Agent's Toolkit and draw a card, because that's what all clues do. But yeah, that's I like Agent's Toolkit a lot, especially in combination with that other enchantment. And both of those come in the pre-con. That was good thinking on R&D's part. Alright, Broker's Confluence. We talked about Broker's Confluence. Denry Kiln, Editor-in-Chief. Let's go back up. I think we accidentally covered Denry Kiln the other day. Yeah, it was in our first video for the spoilers. Alright. So, Denry Kiln, Editor-in-Chief. 2 and a white and a blue for a 2/2 Cat Advisor. Denry Kiln, Editor-in-Chief, enters the battlefield with your choice of a +1/+1 counter, First Strike, or Vigilance counter on it. Whenever a non-token creature you control enters the battlefield, if Denry has counters on it, put the same number and kind of counters on that creature. So that as a commander would be an awesome thing to build around, but in this deck in particular, with the context of what we're dealing with, the different types of counters and all that stuff, Denry Kiln definitely feels like it fits in very well with that strategy. I would say if you're gonna do a broker style deck with the different types of counters, like Denry Kiln is shoe in, definitely keep them in there. Gavel of the Righteous. Okay, that feels like an artifact that's down here. Yep, right here. Gavel of the Righteous. So 2 artifact equipment. At the beginning of combat on your turn, put a charge counter on Gavel of the Righteous. Interesting, a charge counter. Equipped creature gets +1/+1 for each counter on Gavel of the Righteous. As long as Gavel of the Righteous has 4 or more counters on it, equipped creature has double strike. And then equip, you can pay 3 or remove a counter from Gavel of the Righteous. Makes sense. It's actually, and all things considered, it's a small price to pay for the type of deck that you're going to have that in. Broker's Charm, we talked about it. Exotic Pets. Okay. Exotic Pets. Where is that Exotic Pets card? That's interesting. Alright, maybe it's back up here. Nope, it's not in here. Exotic Pets, here we go. Okay, so you got the fishies. 1 white and a blue for an instant. Create 2 1/1 blue fish creature tokens with this creature can't be blocked. Then for each kind of counter among creatures you control, put a counter of that kind on those tokens. Super goofy. Okay. Kind of interesting. And then Broker's Hideout. Broker's Hideout. Is that a land? Or is that another artifact? I would think that's a land, to be honest. Yeah, but I'm not seeing it. As it's definitely not a land. Oh, you know what? It is a land. It's that one that's up here. I think that we talked about it already. Yeah, it's that land right there. Okay, cool. Well, that's pretty much the spoilers for this set, guys. And I know that those of you out there that have already enjoyed your pre-release, I hope you did enjoy your pre-release. And I think that this brings a lot of new stuff to the game, particularly in Commander, because now we have these traditional colors that we've had in the past, and we kind of get a new twist to them. And I really appreciate that Wizards has been doing this for all of the color combinations. The next one I'd like to see is how they kind of splash with the other half of like the 2-color ones that they had, because they had like Strixhaven, they came out with some 2-color ones, and now they're kind of going back and doing some of those, and they did these ones, which is all of these were the old like Shards of Alara. They did Ikoria, which used to be like the old Khans of Tarkir, were those colors. So it'd be interesting to see what they do next with the traditional color pairings, as it were, but with like a different twist to what they're gonna do. Super fun. Well, I hope that you guys enjoy listening to me. And tomorrow the plan is, the plan is to have another stream tomorrow for a Dexplanation. Don't really know which deck I'm gonna do yet. Might end up doing the Bant deck, because I have talked about that a few times, and that's actually my quote unquote first deck. And I'll do more of an explanation to that as to why I say within quotes that it's my first deck, but that's probably the one I'm going to do tomorrow. And then, barring that there's nothing else that comes up between that. And then Thursday, that is going to be the spell table game. So please tune in for that. I've got some guys in my play group that I've reached out to, and in spell table you can't do everybody. You can have only up to 4 players. So unfortunately, we'll only have 4 out of the all the awesome people that we have in our play group. But we'll still have a pretty fun game, and hopefully I will see you guys there. Guys, really appreciate the follows and the you guys tuning in and listening in. If you could, please make sure that you're following me on Twitter and on Facebook. Again, you look up the Leyline MTG. I'll pop right up with my logo, the same logo that I have right there behind me. And also on YouTube, take a look there too. If you miss these videos, I will also post them up on YouTube there. That way you guys can still get to see me there too. Please subscribe over there on YouTube as well, so you see my notifications over there. And again, super appreciate you guys letting me talk about Magic. Again, it's my favorite game ever. I can talk about it all day. Alright, love you guys. See you guys tomorrow or Thursday.